So what are the things that you do as the chief security officer of Coinbase and a leader in this field to make sure that you protect our brothers and sisters?
So first of all, I believe nothing. Trust nothing. That should be a baseline.
Baseline rule one.
Baseline rule
Be
one.
skeptical.
Trust no one.
Trust no one. Trust nothing. Be skeptical is the common answer to that.
Welcome to Warrior Money, the show dedicated to supporting our brother sister veterans. I'm Patrick Murphy.
And I'm Dan Kunze.
Let's get right into it with bottom line up front. How does a battle-tested veteran trained in counterintelligence and mission-first leadership build Coinbase into a security-first fortress, defending billions in crypto? Philip Martin, welcome to Warrior Money.
Thanks for having me, guys.
We got to go right from the bottom line up front. Why should our American veterans, our brothers and sisters, trust Coinbase and crypto?
So they should trust Coinbase because it's exactly as you say. Security from the ground up from day one is right there in the mission. Coinbase wants to be the easiest to use and most trusted. And we really do live that. From our CEO right on down to the newest member of the org. As far as cryptocurrency, I think the important thing that our brothers and sisters need to know about is that it is a piece of the economic system of the future. Today, you're going to Starbucks buying your coffee, you're probably not using crypto, and that's fine. We're very well served today by the financial system that we all have, but over time, and especially outside the U.S., I think we're going to see cryptocurrency become a key everyday part of individuals' lives.
Why do you think that?
I think it's fundamentally easier and better than the current financial system. Here's a crazy thing for you. Today, when you send money via like ACH, right, like a bank transfer, what you're under the hood, those banks are writing text files and sending them to each other via a protocol called FTP, right? It's insane. This is incredibly old technology. Some of the formats of this stuff are based even farther in the past. And so we can keep layering more and more and more on top of this very old, sometimes creaky system, or we can ask ourselves, okay, we've learned a lot since then. How would we build it now, today? And that's what crypto is really trying to do.
It sounds like the VA electronic health record.
It sounds like every big
Cobalt, right. Yeah, Dan is like an expert in like enterprise level.
We're going to rewrite a lot of code to have to deal with this. But it also kind of speaks to a different point that we made in one of our previous shows. Like we talked about some cyber threats within North Korea, Iran. We talked about China. We talked about kind of the emergent cyber threats, right?
Yeah.
I'm wondering how do you think about this from a former counterintelligence officer? Why crypto and why the platforms you're describing are kind of like the right bridge for us to navigate through?
Yeah. There's so many answers to this question. Let me take the big geopolitical one first.
Yeah, go for
it. So you guys have probably talked at some point about de-dollarization in trade around the world as a response to the sanctions post-Ukraine, right?
Yeah.
It's a fascinating set of problems. One of the interesting things about cryptocurrency, and there's been a number of articles written about this over the years, and stablecoins in particular, is they can foster the bottom-up re-dollarization of the mom-and-pop global economy.
That's really interesting way. Yeah, it's
right?
Really, so they can have a grassroots aggregate way because the technology to do it.
Because they listen, they look at that. Would they rather hold a dollar or hold whatever they're now?
Or a sat or whatever. Yeah,
right. Clearly the answer is not their local currency, right? So that in itself is a fascinating use case for crypto and reason that it's going to be a durable global phenomenon.
I love that. That makes total sense. So let's talk about you real fast because I'm like, this is a really great story.
Yeah.
You had a non-traditional path in the military.
Yes, I did.
You started as a software engineer.
Yep.
And then you went in the military. Talked about that a little bit for me.
Yeah, sure. So I was that nerd in their parents' basement.
Yeah.
Right. Back in then, his parents didn't have a basement, so it's a notional basement, right?
Garage, basement,
right.
whatever.
Pick your thing.
Yeah.
Taught myself to code when I was in high school. Went to college. It was super boring. Dropped out. Went to work in Silicon Valley. Went to work for a couple of companies. 9/11 happened.
Yeah.
And I went into the military. In the military, I focused on counterintelligence. I was an Arabic linguist, got to do a bunch of cool stuff, really learned a lot about as you said in the intro, sort of mission first or leadership, but we're really just people first leadership as I would talk about it. And was able to wrap that into my technical background as I sort of left the military to move into cybersecurity, and just I've never looked back.
Yeah, so we talk a lot on this show about finding purpose and transitioning to purpose, right? So you moved from Army to Amazon to then an early employee at Palantir to then an early employee at Coinbase.
Yeah.
Can you talk about what you were in search of? Like why did you?
Yeah, for sure.
So like, like most people say, hey, Army to Amazon's a really good journey, right? But there's a call that I feel like you had that was like, hey, I got to go do something else. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Exactly right. So, coming from the military, the thing that kept me in as long as I was in was always the mission. It was always like the larger context of what we're doing in the world. And when I went to Amazon, great company. They do amazing things. I give them way too much money, right?
You, me, my wife.
Right.
We're all not
the core
Amazon showed up this morning.
Right. The core of it is they ship more boxes faster to more people.
Yeah.
It's great, but that's not what was really important to me. It didn't like really resonate with me.
Yeah.
And so when a guy I served with, who was at Palantir at the time, reached out and said like, hey, you should really come talk to Palantir. Like we're doing cool stuff. It's stuff that you care about. It was an easy, I should absolutely explore that.
Yeah, can I just one question? The stuff you care about. Give me the very specific, visceral example of what that meant for you.
Yeah, I think it is, and really what drew me to Palantir and then Coinbase is I could see a problem in the world that I had like direct experience with, right? I touched this problem before in some way. And the people that were there, that I saw, that I met, that I interacted with, were all great, motivated, smart, wanted to be there for the mission, not just for a paycheck.
Yeah, and I think that's what's so impressive about your background. So you served in the military, you go in these major tech companies, you're now at Coinbase, you have $320 billion assets on platform, right? Mm-hmm. And there's this trust because, frankly, in America, there's a lack of trust in institutions, lack of trust in government, lack of trust in corporate America. And when you have about 5.5 million American households that are unbanked, that are not using it, Coinbase and other crypto asset teams are really filling up that space here in America and overseas. Why do you think that is?
The core of what crypto is a disintermediated platform. Right. And what I mean by that, I mean that today, when you swipe that credit card or whatever, there are, depends on the credit card, the merchant, whatever, but call it 3, 4, up to 5 different entities that take a bite of that transaction in some way. Right. And they charge a fee for that, and they provide some level of service to the ecosystem. And again, that's built up over many, many, many years, decades really of development. Coinbase turns that on its head and says we should not have intermediaries. We should allow direct transactions in entity to entity. Those transactions should not be censorable by a third party, a government, whoever it is.
Yeah, that's debanking,
right?
Unbanked,
right.
But again, I apologize.
No, it's both are concerns, right? And it allows that to happen in a way that is that you don't have to seek approval by a bank, for example, to engage with the protocol.
Yeah, Dan, we did an event with Senator Pat Toomey, with Coinbase, run up to elections, just getting people to vote. But I do think when for people who don't understand, because listen, our kids use it, my kids use it because they're a little bit older than Dan's, and a little bit older than yours. But when you look at like even using Venmo, right? I use Venmo, but it takes 2 or 3 days for that transaction to go to the bank, and then you get your money and stuff. So why do you think it's so easy for folks just to trust it? Is it that pay-vovly and instant response that they get, that they build it up over time?
I think some of it is that. It happens right there in front of you. Very, very quick transaction times. Once you get into the infrastructure of it, you understand a little bit more about, hey, right now, those numbers on my bank account are basically me trusting the bank to say that those numbers are in fact there and is backed and risk managed and everything else. If you choose to be a self-custodial user of crypto, there's no trust in that system. There is just what you can see.
Yeah, we talked about that in the context of like the veterans trusting, and like we had a conversation most recently about like all right, vets, like you guys know it's not easy to give your money away. Like,
Right.
why are you you don't the first litmus test should be easy to give my money away. Like that should be the very first thing to know you might be getting frauded. Like, can you talk about that a little bit? Like how do you see like personal financial protection and security being integrated into one kind of to create that new environment for folks?
Man, it is so tough right now, especially with the rise of generative AI, to tell truth from falsehood.
That's such a scary proposition. I hear you.
And this has a huge impact on fraud.
Yep.
Right, where the fraudsters now, even if, let's say, there's a call center in, I'm just going to pick a random country, not casting shade, but a call center in the Philippines, folks, AI can fix their accents, right? AI can make them sound like they are next door to you.
Oh my gosh!
Right? That they're from Pennsylvania.
Hey,
right?
this is Penny from Kansas.
100%. Right?
Yeah.
It can do all sorts of things that enable very targeted exploitation in that way, and do it at scale.
Yeah.
Which is so scary when we talk about financial fraud. And victims in that way. It also enables, the scammers to be much more efficient in how they do things, right? If you're a scammer reaching out to some victim, well, maybe you can have an AI chatbot take the first half of that, right? And now only a human gets involved later in the pipeline when the lead is qualified, as it were.
Yeah,
right?
and I think the important part that you're bringing up, Philip, is the fact that veterans and the veterans community specifically are often the targets of these cyber scammers.
Absolutely.
9 in 10 veterans have reported that they've been scammed as cyber threats. About $1.4 billion have been taken from American veterans over the last several years. So what are the things that you do as the chief security officer of Coinbase and a leader in this field to make sure that you protect our brothers and sisters?
So first of all, I believe nothing. Trust nothing. That should be a baseline.
Baseline rule one.
Baseline rule
Be
one.
skeptical.
Trust no one.
Trust no one. Trust nothing. Be skeptical is the kind of say that.
Yeah.
Number two, I think it's important to the extent that you are contemplating a financial decision, it's important for that not to happen in a vacuum, right? So talk to your friends, talk to your partner, talk to your parents, talk to your brothers and sisters, talk to your fellow vets. But the way scammers, like the number one indicator that I see of people being scammed is they are encouraged not to share what they're about to do with anyone else. And there could be any number of reasons that they're encouraged not to do it. But financial decisions, two things, should always be transparent. You should be willing to talk to your parents or whoever. And number two, it should not be made under time pressure. If someone is telling you have to move now, they're probably, in my opinion, scamming you.
Yeah. All right, we're going to hold that thought. We'll be right back. Take a quick break. More in just a second on Where Your Money. All right, welcome back to Where Your Money. We're back with Philip Martin.
As the guy in charge of security at a platform that's known for speed, which is, I've used Coinbase. I think you've used Coinbase. Like, it's known for speed. How do you manage the critical priority of speed and access versus, is this really who you're talking? Like, is this, because I have to imagine that's your number one priority. Like, trust is your number one priority. And then below that is accessibility and usefulness of the platform, right? So how do you think through, like, how do you do that?
So two things. I think the speed I'm talking about is speed of decision, which is distinct from speed of execution.
Oh, that's a really interesting adjustment.
Right? So like if you're being pushed to make a decision.
I love that. Yeah.
Super quickly.
Yeah.
Like take a step back.
Yeah, makes sense.
Right? But if you've made the decision slowly and carefully, if you've considered it, had to talk to your friends and family, neighbors, whoever, then execute that quickly.
Yeah, almost like they're trying to roll them over to make a decision.
Right.
So that's how you're differentiating between them.
But then we want high speed of execution. That's very important to us, right? You as a consumer should be able to get on platform, get verified, and do what you want to do as fast as possible. And so we do a ton of work around this, around machine learning models and making it as easy as possible for you to verify yourself as like a legit real human being who's right. So we spend a ton of time and effort and money on that.
We're going to talk about it more in the back half, but this week happens to be Cyber Week, Crypto Week in Washington, D.C. So when you talk about Crypto Week, there's leaders like Congressman Richie Torres, represents right down the street in Harlem, New York. His argument is, hey, whether, we don't have a lot of big banks, in our community, and you're seeing that overseas.
Absolutely.
Right? And why do you think that there's especially with young people that are unbanking, that are unbanked or unbanking themselves. Why do you think it is so imperative that they're joining Coinbase or other ones?
So here's an interesting question for you. Have you guys, either of you been to Africa?
No, I would love to though.
Yeah, where in Africa?
I was in South Africa, Stellenbosch, Cape Town. Saw the Big Five. Yeah,
perfect. And this may be less true in South Africa, but how many telephone poles did you see?
Not too many.
Yeah. The reason why is that Africa largely skipped that phase of development in telecom. You go to Uganda or Kenya or whatever, you're not going to see, especially outside the cities, the main big
Joburg
cities, right? You're not going to see a ton of copper wire stringing out there because they hopped pretty quickly over to cell phones. And at the same time, there is not I'm sure this is an exaggeration, but directionally true. There's not a village in Africa that doesn't have at least one cell phone, right? And so I think what you're seeing in those countries is this is true for cell phones too. This new technology, easier to adopt, better for our needs, easier to roll out. We're seeing, I think, that same thing, but in the financial context with cryptocurrency, where countries like Uganda, Kenya, maybe we go into Venezuela, into Argentina, see real live use cases today in the ability to transact, to hold more stable currencies, to participate in the global financial system in a way that they just flat out couldn't prior. And so we're seeing them make that leapfrog, in some cases over traditional banks into crypto because it's more suited to their needs.
Yeah, I mean, I see it with my own son. He has his first jobs. He's working 2 jobs this summer, and he's in Hassel's ice cream place as we speak right now. And he gets a check, and he's like, "Dad, I gotta go to the bank." I'm like, "Hey, you just take a picture of it and deposit it." And but to him, it's like it's such a pain.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like,
it's slow, it's cumbersome. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So how do you think about this? I think about you just named South American countries, you named African countries, you named emerging markets and a whole bunch of emerging places, right? How do you think about from a counterintelligence perspective? How do you think about national security and even our defense posture as it relates to giving more people access to more? I have no idea how you would think about it. How do you think about that?
I think different people think about it in a bunch of different ways. I think about it as a good thing, right? I go back to I don't know if this is still true, but there was an old saying, "No country that has a McDonald's ever made war on the United States." You ever heard this?
Well, it's good. Yeah, economic diplomacy.
Right.
I mean, people think it's like our smart power is not just a military force, but our economy. And once you have a Starbucks or McDonald's, it's like that's an American institution, and they see a face.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. I don't know that that's literally true, but maybe it still is.
Well, there's no more McDonald's in Russia, so yeah.
Right.
So,
but it was true for a very long time, and I think it's direction why this is so important. So I see it as an expansion of the U.S. economy and currency system into places where it makes it then harder for them to want to engage with us in global conflict.
Yeah. And I was going to say, it goes back to like the trust level, right? Mm-hmm. And all 3 of us are Army veterans. We all believe like we're all reluctant warriors, right? And that's the beauty of America is that we don't want to fight other people. That we do it as a last resort. But it goes back to that trust level, right? When I look in the eye and look at our viewers in the eye on this podcast, they get a feel for who you are as a person, as a leader character. But you've built teams in the Army. I love the fact that you were at Defense Logistic Agency, and you or DLI, and then you look at I want to say like Assalamu alaikum, because Arabic, right? And go there. But you built teams in the public sector in our Army. But you also did in the private sector. Mm-hmm. What are some of the characteristics that you look at, whether they're veterans or not, when you're building your teams?
Humility and curiosity, period. Those are the 2 top for me. Give me someone who doesn't know the topic, but is humble enough to know that they don't know the topic and is curious enough to ask questions. They can learn, right? That's one of the things that the military taught me. Anyone can learn anything. With the right instruction, with the right time, with the right framework. You can teach people the skills.
So what should that specialist that's listening to us at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, what should they learn about crypto and how can they learn it?
So we put out a ton of educational material on Coinbase. We do it all sorts of media, YouTube videos, blog posts. So there is a ton of information out there for that specialist to dive into just from Coinbase. There are, probably half a dozen other credible places to go learn. But I think what they should understand for themselves, because everyone's going to have a different way they relate to cryptocurrency that makes sense for them, right? Maybe that specialist comes from an immigrant family who struggle with remittances back to their country of origin. They should explore how crypto can help with that. Maybe that person comes from, who knows what background they come from. I would suggest what they look for is where in their life is there financial friction, and is there a way that crypto can help make that a little bit easier.
You can even literally extract that and make that however you find your purpose elsewhere, right?
Right, 100%.
So you just described I think the most beautiful transition advice that you've got to find the problem that you care enough to solve for.
Yeah,
and that's what helps you solve. That's calls your heart to go solve that problem. That's the transition advice that I think we've all navigated through in this conversation. Is like find where your heart is.
Yep.
But it's really hard to do that through noise. So very specifically, we talk a lot about officers can have these sorts of jobs or enlisted can have these sorts of jobs.
Yeah.
I don't think that matters in the work world. I think it matters less and less.
Agree.
How do you help a 22-year-old, 25-year-old, E5, E6, kind of lost and trying to transition? How do you get to that person and talk to them? How do you think about that?
So I think for that person, the most important thing is for them to be able to explore, because what that 25, 26-year-old E5, E6,
they might even think they're old because they feel like they're old in the Army, right?
But they've been in since high school.
Yeah, totally.
Right, to get to,
they might be a little broken.
They might probably they don't actually know what the world is outside of the bubble that the military creates, right? And so I don't even know that person knows what they're passionate about beyond the stuff that they do in the military and their group of military friends, right?
And what they think they know, right?
Right,
right. Yeah.
And so I think there are, and I think there should be way more of these, by the way, because I think the ones that exist today are very focused, but there are a number of internship transition programs in the military. They tend to be focused on officers or special forces, things like that. I wish
Skill Bridge is
a good example. I wish that this existed across the board for transitioning service members. Yeah. And I think the fact that it doesn't is a real disservice, both to America, where that 25, 26-year-old E5, E6 has skills that I probably care a lot about, but I have no way to reach him at all.
You as your chief security officer of Coinbase, there's no way to get to that. We saw that on a task force that we worked together on. You just can't get through at the level that you need to get through. It's
100%.
And that's part of why I think this podcast is so important, because the content here exists and everybody can access it from a phone, right? But that's the gap that I can't see us filling well.
Yeah.
And to your point, that creates insecurity and instability, and that becomes a real big issue for folks.
100%. And so the way what that E5, E6 can do is, and this sounds like an inane answer, but go listen to a bunch of podcasts, explore what the world outside the military is like.
Yep. Shout out Warrior Money.
Shout out Warrior Money. But not just Warrior Money, right? There's a bunch of content out there. Anything from I'm trying to think of some of anything from go listen to NPR One, right? It doesn't matter. In fact, I will say that.
Probably matters. Absolutely the exact opposite.
Broaden the horizon.
Yeah.
Right? Get out there, learn more about what's going on in the world, what the civilian world outside the military looks like. And one day you're going to listen to something and be like, that's really interesting. And you're going to
oh my gosh, I connected that to a problem at home.
Yeah.
I've connected that to a problem
I connected,
at home.
or that makes sense that I have some sort of touch point on this problem. It's visceral to me, as you said.
It's so interesting you're saying that, because you talked about in the beginning, it's about having that humility that you don't know everything. If people look at the military and oh, you guys are just strong and want to break things. It's well, sometimes yes, right? But at the same time, we want to learn. Podcast I still is No Stupid Questions. It's by Angela Duckworth. She teaches with me at Wharton Business School, right? And to me, those type of podcasts, I learned from it. Right? I don't even know what the topic's going to be at the time, right? But I'm either lifting weights or I'm running or doing something where I could just listen to it and just and learn. I know we got to wrap up soon. I have to say, I do think when you look at transitioning about 200,000 of our troops who transition every single year, and whether they've already transitioned or they're going to transition a year or two from now, the fact that they already have their security clearance is a huge leg up when it comes to cybersecurity, when it comes to tech companies wanting to hire them. And we're over 1 million short of those professionals, and they don't have to have those certifications before they leave the military or a college degree, because it's more, what advice would you give them as they're looking at where they might go in their next chapter?
So like leveraging that security clearance is for those that are lucky enough to have it, real leg up. I think it is interesting in that it focuses your job search around the DC area, right? Like,
so I mean, maybe, yeah, but like the Springs needs that work.
Mm-hmm.
There's a bunch of places that are kind of emerging now.
Sure.
That do need, but I hear what you're saying. It's overwhelmingly centered in DC, but like security clearances are becoming a thing, not just in DC area. I think, especially in this administration.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. There's opportunity everywhere. I think, looking at then programs where you can add on to that, right? How can you make yourself a little bit more desirable, show some effort towards the job that you want, right? Get that first entry-level certificate, a Security Plus in cybersecurity would be the example there. And show me as a hiring manager, someone that's like, why would I invest in this person? Well, because they've made the effort, and I can see that.
Yeah, and we talk about leverage all the time, that our troops and veterans, they can leverage the GI Bill, the VA home loan, but leverage things like SkillBridge, as we mentioned. And the SkillBridge, again, for those who don't know, it's like 3 to 6 months. You could go, you're still on Uncle Sam's dime, but you go and work in corporate America, and it's a tryout for both parties.
It's a great
you
program.
like it, et cetera. And then the VA even has apprenticeship programs that they're doubling down on. So there's a lot of leveraging opportunities that are out there. Our job is to articulate to them, let them know. But Philip, you're great America. We appreciate you joining us on Where Your Money.
Yeah, thanks.
Appreciate you guys. Thanks for tuning in.
All right. So that wraps up our show this week. So watch, listen anywhere you get your podcast. If you have comments, shoot us an email at podcast@yahoo.com. See you next time on Where Your Money.
This content was not intended to be financial advice and should not be used as a substitute for professional financial services.